Welcome. No? Okay. Hi, welcome to the Screensaver Virtual Poetry Festival. I'm your host, JC Dia.
And I'm Miriam OJ.
And we are so excited to introduce the next poet.
Today we have Brenda Shaughnessy, who's going to be doing a reading, and then we're going to talk with her afterwards. Brenda Shaughnessy is the author of 5 poetry collections, including The Octopus Museum, So Much Synth, Our Andromeda, Human Dark with Sugar, and Interior with Sudden Joy. Her work has appeared in Best American Poetry, Harper's, The New York Times, The New Yorker, O Magazine, Paris Review, Poetry Magazine, and elsewhere. Recent collaborative projects include writing librettos for a mass commission by Trinity Church Wall Street and also for the opera Sensorium X for composer Paola Pristini, and a poem essay for the exhibition catalog for Toba Kadori's solo retrospective show at LACMA. A 2013 Guggenheim Foundation Fellow, she is a professor of English and creative writing at Rutgers University, New York. She lives in Verona, New Jersey with her family. The vividness with which she can talk about the darkness and her ability to open up the audiences makes her a force to be reckoned with. I'm so excited to hear her read and talk with her afterwards. So without further ado, I give you Brenda Shaughnessy.
Thank you so much, Miriam. That was beautiful. It's always like, you know how we're all lately sort of traveling through our pasts? You know how it's like, instead of going any place, we're just like, remember when I went to that one place? I feel like sometimes like that, like an intro like that, sort of like that, like you made me to sort of travel through all those different projects and all those different spaces. And it's really nice. I mean, the main reason why I write poetry is because I believe that processing what we're going through is worthwhile, and making it into something useful, hearable, shareable, beautiful is worth my sort of lifelong time and energy. And so I love to hear. I mean, I love a conversation better than a reading, but I also just want to say thank you for listening, for reading, for including me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to Pace University, to JC, and to Miriam, and to Dana J. I really, I feel very lucky to be able to have a space to be heard, especially in this moment in our current cultural milieu where they seem to want to shut women down completely. 100%, like shut us down. So I'm just gonna say all my weird stuff, because what else could I do? All right, back when we used to visit people and go places and see things and be with each other and hug and whatnot. This is called Visitor. I am dreaming of a house just like this one, but larger and opener to the trees, nighter than day and higher than noon. And you visiting, knocking to get in, hoping for icy milk or hot tea or whatever it is you like. For each night is a long drink in a short glass, a drink of black sound water. Such a rush and fall of lonesome, no form can contain it. And if it isn't night yet, though I seem to recall that it is, then it is not for everyone. Did you receive my invitation? It is not for everyone. Please come to my house lit by leaf light. It's like a book with bright pages filled with flocks and glens and groves and overlooked by Pan, that seductive satyr in whom the fish is also cooked. A book that took too long to read, but minutes to unread, that is to forget. Strange are the pages thus, nothing but the hope of company. I made too much pie in expectation. I was hoping to sit with you in a treehouse, in a nightgown, in a real way. Did you receive my invitation? Written in haste, before leaf blinked out, before the idea fully formed, an idea like a storm cloud that does not spill or arrive, but moves silently in a direction, like a dark book in a long life, with a vague hope in a wood house with an open door. So I have this super queer book out last year, called The Octopus Museum, and I wrote it partly in Hawaii. I had worked so hard. All I wanted was to go to Hawaii and swim in the ocean. I just thought, I just want to swim. And I finally I had to work to get to a sabbatical, and then I had to raise some funds, and then I finally got there, and there I was standing at the ocean on the beach in Hawaii. And I was like suddenly afraid to go in the water. Has it ever happened to you? Do you know what I mean? And then I was like, I'm afraid. Which is so stupid, right? And I thought about it. I really think that a fear like that, it feels stupid, but actually if you can use it, and I love something that Louise Glick said when she I've been reading back to Louise Glick after she won the Nobel Prize, and sort of going back to her because I really love her work. And she said something great in an interview, which was that she really believes that experience should be used. She doesn't want anything to be wasted. She wants to use her experiences. And so she thinks poetry is a good use of it. And I feel like a fear that's stupid, like getting all the way to the edge of the water and then not being scared to go in the water, is a fear that's usable, right? So I used it to write this poem, which really felt like it was about, like, can I ever go in anywhere? You know, is it ever safe? And am I ever myself going in anywhere? So this is called Identity and Community, or There Is No I in C. I don't want to be surrounded by people, or even one person, but I don't want to always be alone. The answer is to become my own pet, hungry for plenty in a plentiful place. There is no true solitude, only. At seaside, I have that familiar sense of being left out. Too far to glean the secret. How go in? What an inhuman surface the sea has, always open. I'm too afraid to go in. I give no yes. Full of shame, but refuse to litter ever. I pick myself up. Wind has power, sun has power. What's power's source? There's no privacy outside. We've invaded it. There is no life outside empire. All paradise is performance for people who pay. Perhaps I'm an invader and feel I haven't paid. What a waste to have lost everything in mind. Watching 3 mom-like women try to go in, I'm green. I want to join them. But they are not my women. I join them, apologizing. They splash away from me. They're their pod. People are alien. I'm an unknown story, erasing myself with seawater. There goes my honey and fog, my shoulders and legs. What could be queerer than this queer tug lust for what already is? Who already am, but other of it? Happens? That kind of desire anymore? Oh, I am that queer thing, pulling and greener than the blue sea. I'm new with envy, beauty washing over itself, no reflection, no claim, nothing to see. If there's anything bluer than the ocean, it's its greenness, it's turquoise blood mixing me. I was a woman alone in the sea. Don't tell anybody, I tell myself. Don't try to remember this. Don't document it. Remember, write down to not document it. So I think that what's so cool about life and poetry is that you can live an episode of your life and then write it, and it's a true story, but it's sort of like the story you wished happened, and make it happen the way you want it. So instead of feeling like a fraidy cat, I could feel like I am an oceanic queer ball floating through the universe. You know, I could sort of feel this empowering other story, which is also mine, right? I'm trying to make sure that anybody who happens to see this becomes a poet. That's my point. Another ocean poem here is so I was obsessed with octopuses before that Octopus Teacher documentary happened, but I loved that show. I thought that was a beautiful movie. And it made me kind of want to have a whole octopus symposium, you know, like a whole 8-day octopus, like multi field, you know, interdisciplinary octopus celebration. This is sel de la terre, sel du mer, which translates into salt of the earth, salt of the sea. Oh, funny runny God. Oops, sorry, I already messed it up. Oh, funny runny little God, who lived in the sea we cut to ribbons. Tell us the big story with your infected mouth. Tell us the big story is so far beyond us we can't possibly ruin it. But you'll let us listen if we sit way in the back, quiet side creatures and marginal beasts. We don't know what we're doing. We catch a single wave, bless you, with necklaces of spit, strut ashore, to pose with our medallions and titles, having won. We make little boats and toss ourselves inside like a ride on a mechanical bull. When thrown, we blame the weather. We can't see anything in front of our face. Salt water stings and burns our eyes, even when we're already crying. We cover them with plastic goggles to ogle each other underwater. We know we are aliens in too deep, but we'll never admit we don't belong. We are the kind of storytellers that frustrate children at bedtime everywhere. Once there was a little girl named insert name who was very tired and went to sleep. The end. Come on. Okay, one more story. Once upon a time, there was a blanket who was so lonely, its great wish was to one day cover up a little girl named insert name. Finally, after what seemed like forever and was actually way past 8:30 p.m., the girl came to bed, pulled up her blanket all cozy, and went to sleep. The end. But you can't pull one over on kids who know when they're shorted. Our only ways are the scammy, power tripping ways, and we know we don't deserve it, but we want to hear the big story. We need an old fashioned plume of ink, all new alphabet, to blot out our lies, all the times we were too tired, unkind, and stupid to tell the truth. All day a rainy day, so we stay inside. That's how we see things. We close our eyes twice. That's how afraid we are of what is. When the rain stops, we dive into pools of plastic water, mistake the sexual fingers of light for fullness of heart, for the goodness of our own gooey center. We thought we were so smart, always ahead of ourselves, minds flapping like a single flag. A mere reaction, a neural blip, we thought was wholly everywhere. Make us sit and listen to you. If you're at the center might hold. Your countless eyes watching us, your arms radiating out in all directions, feeling for what's next. Sound comes to us in waves, and we dissolve into salt water when we're most real. Okay, I'm gonna switch gears. Is that from biking, from bicycling? What's switching gears about? I just said it. It came out of my mouth. I have no idea what it means. I meant I'm going to switch books because that's, I guess, what I know. All right, this is a book called So Much Synth. No one likes this book, but I do. I wrote it. I think it's really it's about puberty and how gross it is and how horrible it is to be a girl growing up. And that's why nobody likes it. Nobody cares about that, right? I do. All right, this is called Never Ever. And this is really, I chose to read this because it's about time, and time is just so messed up right now. I am trying to I'm trying to sort of go back to older pieces, mine and other people's work, poems, stories, who wrote about time, because I'm trying to figure out what we used to think of it. What did it used to be? This is never ever. Alarmed. Today is a new dawn. And that affair recurs daily, like clockwork. Undone at dusk, when a new restaurant emerges in the malnourished night. We said it would be this way once this became the way it was. So, in a way, we were waiting for it. I still haven't eaten, said the cook in the kitchen. A compliant complaint. I never eat, says the slender diner. It's slander, and she's scared, like a bully, pushing lettuce around. The cook can't look, blind with hunger and anger. I told a waiter to wait for me, and I haven't seen him since. Oh, it has been 40 minutes. It has been 40 years. Late is a synonym for dead, which is a euphemism for ever. Ever is a double edged word, at once itself and its own opposite. Always and always some other time. In the category of cleave, then, to cut and to cling to, somewhat mournfully. That sea won't let leave alone. Even so, forever's now's never. And remember is just the future occluded or dreaming. The day has come, a dusty gust of disgusting August, functioning as a people mover. Maybe we're going nowhere, but wherever I go, I see us everywhere. On occasions of fanciness or out to eat. As if people, stark, nowish people, themselves were the forever of nothing, the everything of nobody, the very same self of us all, after all, at long last the first. That's such a weirdie. All right, here's a love poem. It's called Gay Pride Weekend, San Francisco, 1992. I forgot how lush and electrified it was with you. The shaggy, fragrant zaps continually passing back and forth. My fingertip, my fingertip to your clavicle, or your wrist rubbing mine to share gardenia oil. We so purred like dragonflies, we kept the mosquitoes away. And the conversation was heavy, mother lacerated childhoods, and the sad way we'd both been ignored and touched badly. Knowing that being fierce and proud and out and loud was just a bright new way to be needy. Please listen to me. Oh, what a buzz. You're the only one I can tell. Even with no secret, I could come close to your ear with my mouth, and that was ecstasy too. We barely touched each other. We didn't have to speak. The love we made leapt to life, like a cat in the space between us, if there ever was space between us, and looked back at us through fog. Sure, this was San Francisco. It was often hard to see, but fog always burned off too. So we watched this creature to see if it knew what it was doing. It didn't. So that's a book that's sort of like, well, this is a book that, this is the wrong cover. This is like a fancy, like leather bound cover that someone gave me. I make it sound like I hate it, but I kind of do. I don't know why it has to be leather. This is Head Handed. And this is a sad one, so so what? What does that mean? It's sad, so prepare yourself, like gird yourself, plug your ears, get your tissues ready. Head Handed. Stop belonging so much. Ugh. I can't stand it when I am so, I spend so much energy on my own banter that I can't read the poems properly. That's like when you, like, have a dinner party and like mess up the main course, so there's only like one side that's good, that everyone has to eat. All right, this is head-handed, as if I'm having dinner parties. If anybody ever puts this, Dana, in a like a time capsule, it'll seem like it was before the pandemic, because I keep mentioning things like visiting and dinner parties and, you know, gay pride and whatnot, like we're all hanging out and breathing on each other. Head-handed. Stop belonging to me so much, facehead. Leave me to my child and my flowers. I can't run with you hanging on to me like that. It's like having 10 dogs on a single lead and no talent for creatures. No hands, no trees. Not my dogs, nobody's. Don't you have a place to go, facehead? Deep into the brick basement of another life? To kill some time, I mean, that furnace light could take a shine to you, and there are always places, none of them mine, and always time. Rainbow sugar show of jimmies falling from ice cream's sky. But that stuff's extra. It's never in supply. Never, however, acres of it. Violet beans and sarcasm, too many flavors of it. All those prodigal particles, flimsily whimsical miracles, and embarrassment of glitches. The chorus, just more us. But nowhere bare and slippery have I got a prayer. If I had two hands to rub together, I wouldn't waste the air. I'm going to go back to the dystopian book. This is another true story. It's called Honeymoon. It's not a poem about my honeymoon. It's a dystopian, sort of metaphoric scene that has details in it from a real wedding I went to. A real wedding that I went to that was at the Plaza Hotel, and it was so fancy. It was like disgusting. I found it very upsetting. And so some of the details are actually real in here, but I've mixed it with other crazy details. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say crazy, with other totally outrageous details. So you can't really tell which is real and which is outrageous, or invented, but they're all, you can't tell which is real, which is invented, but they're all outrageous. It was also sort of written in Fresno. This is called Honeymoon. It's so flat here you can see everything. It's not romantic. Nobody can slip in or out in secret. And who among us has pumped the last worry through her heart? Collapsing into shade, I wish for more sons, endless daughters, a higher ratio of my people to other people. Why not want what I want? Since we used all the air conditioning, it's become impossible to think things through. Can you believe your ears? All the electric music in the world has been turned into handbells. I wish I had a cushion for my knees instead of gloves to keep the handbells pure. We can get used to anything. That doesn't mean we should. I went to a wedding where everything was outrageous, but trying to act modest by including very goofy elements, such as people in bear costumes and gold nuggets descending from the ceiling only to be jerked back up out of reach when people tried to grab them. Long ago, a matrimonial family collected a few eggs from each household in the village to contribute to the wedding cake. A pig for the dinner, a gift from a rich great uncle. Shortly after, there was a period of department store gift services, and electro-synth harps for hire. But now we pick dandelions to make wine and pluck chickens to make fine the groom's cloak. He wants large brown wings. He wants wolf pelt for his loins. He wants. There's no end to that. The bride is someone who's only ever served. No use asking someone who's once had a true taste of freedom, whose eyes widened and whose pelvis thrust up unbidden. Better she be someone who might never know what she lost. It is as it ever was. How many centuries have brides been made and used in this way? How few centuries have let women be girls first, swirling as long as they wanted into their sweetness and sharpening into ripeness, only becoming women once full, heavy love was their desire inside and out. Maybe one, maybe not quite one full century. All right, I'm going to end with this one poem called Our Zero Waiver. It's heavily inspired by Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, and my dreams lately. And with this new thing that's happened with the Supreme Court, I feel it's necessary to read this. It's called Our Zero Waiver. Her head in my lap, looking up at the sky. I watched her face watch the stars, moonlighting her like a still lake. I couldn't tell what color her eyes were. They could be light ordinarily, but collected all the dark tickets to ride the night in peace, in calm tonight. I brushed her hair away from her forehead. I don't think she's happy, but her worries have smoothed, it seems. How could she be happy? She came to us under an inhuman law. I have no idea what she suffered. She's somewhere between 38 and 42, and she had nowhere to go. We took her in. We don't have much, but we couldn't bear the feeling of hoarding our one extra bedroom since Nana died. We figured we'd volunteer for a -1+1 zero waiver instead of waiting and watching the household rations be cut due to decreased household size. No, we aren't so selfless a family. I'll never know if we would have been. If things were different, would we have taken in foster children, adopted, orphaned, or abandoned babies, opened our doors, arms aching to give love where love was needed? Instead of waiting for them to reassess our unit, for them to size us up for an assigned new occupant, we figured if we volunteered, at least we could choose the category. That way we'd be assigned a woman between the ages of 38 and 42. There's a surplus. I was mostly worried we'd get assigned an offender, a man, someone who lied and broke down doors and would keep us sleepless. We couldn't choose who'd come to live with us, but we could avoid an offender if we took on an early crone. We were allowed an EC because we were not allowed another non-offender man. It's why we couldn't take in our friend Paul, who needed a home. Our old neighbor Michelle could have been safe with us, but she's too young. Until age 30, she'll live in the young women's space. You get someone who doesn't know you, usually from another town. Someone who probably has to leave for any of the usual reasons. A baby is born, or a family member is released back into the home. Sometimes it's your own baby. Sometimes a sibling returns. There are unofficial occupancy matchmakers, more broker than seer. They know many people in a lot of single family occupancy housing, and folks tell them the news, the comings and goings. Welch was our broker. We gave her daughter reading lessons for a year as soon as Nana got sick, payment in advance for finding us a good woman of the right age and circumstance. It was almost too much to hope for someone remotely stable or sane. Show me one person who is these days. That's a clone. She brought Amy to our place 1 week ago. Amy's been crying a lot, and then stone-faced, and then apologetic. Her misery genuine, her smile forced. She must have had a baby she had to leave, or the baby died. In any case, her milk came in. My heart broke for her. Nobody's allowed to waste baby milk, but fuck it. Not everything can be salvaged, inventoried, sold. Together we went out the backyard near the trees and lay down on our backs. I didn't want to touch her. How tender she must be. But she propped her head onto the pillow of my lap. Better to see the stars and the moon. I sat up then, the better to watch her. My skirt was wet in 2 spots from her tears. Her shirt was wet in 2 spots from her milk. My own cheeks were streaked, my eyes mirrored, shadowed by her shining ones. The night was celebrating its sparkles, moon glow, glimmering, showing off like TV shows used to show themselves at night, exposing themselves in our living rooms. She and I made no sound, said nothing. What would we say? Who could hear it in that loud night, flashing its millions of bodies? I'll end there. Thank you.
Oh, gorgeous. Brenda, the sound of your poems is, do you hear them before you compose them or while you're composing them? Like, does the language come first?
It comes simultaneously with the thought.
Okay.
The thought, it comes simultaneously with the sound. But then if I get a good pair of sounds going, like a couple of sounds that are like rhyming or have the same, especially if it's a long vowel, then I will suddenly it'll start magnetizing and attracting a bunch of other same long vowel sounds, and they'll all start crowding around each other and sort of becoming this weird like waterfall of those same sounds. It's not as often with consonants, but it happens a lot with vowels.
Do you use the language to find out more about the thought?
Yes, but sometimes I overthink it and force the thought the wrong way.
Okay.
Because I'll be like, oh, that has an O. I should use it. And then it's actually wrong meaning wise. But I've been seduced into thinking that since it's the right sound, it's correct. And then I can't think straight and I don't know which is the right one. And that's how years and years and years later, I'll find a mistake where I should have used a different word. And I'll be like, oh, that was wrong. I just wanted it to sound that way. So I chose the wrong word. I don't know why I don't know what I'm writing at the time. You'd think you would know, but I don't.
At what point do you discover what you're writing?
Oh no, I think I know what I'm writing when I'm writing it. It's just that afterwards I'm like, wait, how did I let that mistake slide? How did I not see that? You know?
I guess the rules of the poem present themselves. And then you follow the rules, but you're really the rule maker. So you shouldn't follow the rules.
I mean, you'd think I would have control over all of it. Why does it know and won't tell me? Like, why? I don't understand that. I've never understood it. How long have I been writing? Over 30 years. I still don't know why it knows and won't tell me. I kind of feel like, but you can't do that parent thing. You can't be like, because I told you. You can't be like, because I'm your mom and I told you so, and you have to do this because I'm your mom and I said so. You can't do that to a poem. It just does its thing and like kind of mocks you silently from the page for not getting it.
Did becoming a mother change how you write?
Yes, because you don't get to be yourself anymore. It's like very simple. Like you used to be yourself, and it was so and in many ways it felt like freedom to just have your own things to worry about. But in many ways, okay, like for example, when I had the bad habit of smoking cigarettes, I wouldn't quit for myself because like I wasn't enough to quit for. Do you see what I mean? But when I got pregnant, I quit immediately because it wasn't for me. I had to quit for the baby. I couldn't smoke the pregnancy. That was obvious. And so I immediately quit when I never thought I could do it before because, you know, it's not, yeah. It's so similarly with before you have a child, you feel like, oh, I'm free, but I can't use that freedom because I don't use it well. I'll just sit there and like wallow and read like like I'll read Infinite Jest with all my freedom and like not knowing that I have a limited amount of time to read everything else. I didn't read Infinite Jest. I didn't waste my time in that way. But what I mean is that then when you have a child, it kind of focuses everything and you know you have to get your writing done in a certain parameter. And you know your heart has been sort of sliced up into new compartments and you don't have access to all of it and they have some of it. And so you just have to like use what you have and therefore you become extremely inventive. So it takes away a lot of your time and a lot of your heart and it uses up a lot of you. But at the same time, what you have left, you use it harder. I think.
That literally just made me go into like a whole existential like mode really quick. Like a lot of your work does that for me, honestly. Um, would you say that you are like an existentialist, or do you focus a lot of your work on existentialism or like time and mortality?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember laughing at a fellow poet. We did a reading and he got up and he said, like, I'm somebody who really can't handle time. I can't exist in the boundaries of time. I don't understand time. Time is such a mystery to me. I have this unique problem with time. And I was like, you are in the club of everybody, dude. We all have this issue. Like, we're all in this parameter. We're all in this weird thing and we don't know if it's real or not. Regardless, our bodies and therefore our lives exist in this one little bracket, which is it's time. That's the bracket. And so it is real, but it's not inside the bracket. It's not really real. You know, is the clock time or is it just a sort of weird symbol?
It's all imaginary.
It's all imaginary, but it also organizes reality, whatever that is. So once you question time, you question, the materiality of existence. And I totally think about this all the time. A lot of us who can't sleep at night do this, right? We just sort of go, "Wait, you're about to fall asleep and you go, but wait a minute, what if time's not real, then, you kind of go down this
The rabbit hole.
What is then? It's fun, right? I mean, what else are we like? Are we supposed to just accept whatever they fucking tell us?
No.
No, exactly. Think about it, think it through yourself. And the best way to do it is to sort of get as many perspectives as possible, read as many things as you can. And you're like, oh, that's what they think about time. That's what they think about time. I'm reading a great book called Motherhood by Sheila Heti. And it's about a woman trying to figure out if she wants to become a mother or not. But it's also about like, what is even life at all? What is free will? What is a choice? And it's particularly important to read a book like that now. It's so nuanced, but like I think it's one of the greatest uses of our freedom and our minds and our just our intellects and our whole system, the emotions and the spiritual and the beliefs and the faith and the um and the trauma. Use all of our whole mechanism to think about like what is this, you know I mean, we could go on all day on this one question. We could go on for for eternity, really.
No, literally though, because it's just so packed. Like it goes into even what you were saying about like dystopic like future and stuff like that. Like it just all ties in together. That's like a whole different like
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's that different because I definitely think that there's a way that we know more than we know, right? I mean, you do. Like you think, well, I haven't read that, or I don't have a doctorate in this particular science, so I don't know, you know, if that mushroom is, is shaped like the cloud I saw when I was 6. You know what I mean? Like there's not a way to compare knowledges, even within ourselves, even within our own perceptive mechanism. It's like it's like we have nothing to compare anything to, so we have to constantly find weird refracting mirrors and glimpses and ponds to look in and, bits of glass to sort of refract light and kaleidoscopic, sunsets to tell us another way of, another sort of way of looking at things. We have to continually be surrounded by that in order to get a sense that any percentage of what we're seeing reflects any kind of reality at all. Because we're only one person. I think that, isn't that part of the pleasure of writing and reading poetry is that you're like, how does this person see it? That's how you see it? And then when you're writing, you're like, this is how I see it. Is that weird? And hopefully the answer is yes.
Miriam had an interesting question that speaks to that. Mirrors and doubling and replicas, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw when I was reading your work, I mean, I saw just a lot of places where you talk about replicas and doubles, and I just wanted to ask you about that, like what, especially now that we're talking about time, like how that plays into just seeing doubles in your life.
Yeah, well, one of the, I mean, I do have a lot of poems about sisters as a kind of like, these are they live the
Mhm.
lives I don't live, you know. There's some poems about clones and replicas and parallel universes, right? Because I was obsessed with the idea of parallel universes and the idea of destiny or fate. Like how can a person make a decision here that means that they end up over here instead of over here on this rope bridge, and if that was really up to them, if that initial decision was up to them, how do you get from point A to point B if nothing's predetermined? um and I think we're always trying to find meaning in those decisions and in those places that you end up. We're trying to say, okay, well, I was supposed to go to this graduate program so that I would do this thing over here and meet these people and then have this situation. These are how we That's how we construct meaning. I was supposed to be at that party where I met this person who, changed my life, etc. But I don't know if it makes any sense if you think of time as linear. I think if you think of your life as a big sort of plop of itself all at once, both not really happening in time and also happening in time, then it makes sense because it all happens as a thing, um, and not not as a either or question of whether you believe in free will or you believe in destiny. Like your life just happened, both as a product of free will and destiny at the same time. Um, and so we all think about, I mean, it's a very simple word for it, right? Regret. Very simple word for like, what if I had done something different? What if I had lived another life? What if I lived a whole other life? And we're always looking at that one moment where it's like, what if I had missed that train that person was on, or that missed that train that got me to the place where you know, what if I hadn't missed the train and had this other thing happen? And this idea that we like to have, it's an idea that we like or an idea that we're scared of. That like, I could have had all these other things. People do this all the time. It's not just regrets, it's also fantasy. I was reading this amazing article in the New Yorker about all these men. They're almost entirely white men who, like, it's a huge epidemic of white men who inflate their military service. They say they have a medal or they have a silver star, or they have a purple heart, or and apparently it's like epidemic. People don't have these things. They didn't necessarily even serve, or they served a normal, had normal service, but then they feel like they have to sort of say that they got awards and stars and whatever. And they'll say things like, I got a silver star. And someone's like, those are really hard to get, actually. There's only been like 12 of those. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, I got one. And they didn't. Why? It's this other thing where like, I don't feel like I'm enough. So I have to pretend I did more. And then so I was recognized in this way. And it's this weird, like pretending that there was another life that was lived, pretending that more happened that was good to me, or that I was recognized in some way. And so that's sort of like the negative, permutation of that. Most of us just sort of say, oh, I wish I hadn't, broken my arm and not become the concert pianist I was supposed to become, or whatever. We say the sort of commensurate to what actually happened. But, as poets, as readers, as writers and imaginers, and sort of people who are creating our own lives, we're doing something where it's like, well, does everything or nothing depend on this decision I'm making? Um, is this the poem that's going to be the best poem I've ever written? Or I'll just do the dishes instead, like it's sort of, we're always in that. So I'm obsessed with this, of course. How can you not be once you think about it? I feel like now I've like doomed everybody, you guys who are listening, to like that same conundrum. Um, yeah. I'm going to stop there because I'm just going to go on.
I loved it. You can keep going. I like how we arrived at doom, though. That's good, because I wanted to ask you about the apocalypse. So when you wrote your most recent book, we were in a current state of apocalypse, right? At that time, just impending.
Yeah. Well, we were not in the pandemic, but we were in Trump.
Yes.
We were in, we were in we were in 45's world, and, that was, I mean, this was very much a response. That book is very much a response to that, because I think I've said this before. I'm not sure if I dreamed that I said this, or if I actually did say this. But like, my fantasies of all the ways that we could go, all the terrible ways that our country, our culture, our world, our families, our our way of life, our just our species, everything could go. There was no end. It was absolutely infinite how many bad scenarios I was coming up with. I couldn't. It was like, well, I guess we could all just like sink into the sea, and I guess everything could just turn into fire, and I guess they could get the nuclear codes, and I guess there's just all these things, and I basically created like a set number of, very bleak scenarios that I put down on paper and said, okay, you just sort of sit right in here, and I can close you and put you on a shelf and not have to think about you anymore, because I wrote you down and you're over there, separate from me, because it was eating me alive. Like most of us, we know that feeling. It was just the sense that there was this one, really, really, really messed up, really like, really unreliable dude, like kind of in charge of everything. And I've had that experience before, but not at that level. I mean, we've all had like that really unreliable, like sketchy dude manager, at the job we were at. But like, this is a lot bigger, and he was the manager of everybody and everything. And it scared the shit out of me. And so I just sort of felt like, what happens if we as a species don't make it? What might happen? Who might take care of us? And then the octopuses, of course, they're sort of, they come in and they take over. Not because they're super nice, because that's not really how it works in the wild. A species doesn't take over another species because they're nice. They take over because they can, and because they're, because they have the circumstances are such. So, so this book was written in total panic, and it was written in a number of places that I perceived to be paradise places. I wrote it partly in Hawaii, like I said, and partly in Italy. And so they were sort of saturated with these places that were so beautiful. And then so the book was sort of written with this and with a huge sort of combination of like incredible natural beauty and incredible artistic beauty, like seeing the Uffizi gallery in Florence, for example, and just seeing like, people made this art. This is incredible. What are we doing instead of this? Why aren't we doing only this? Having all that beauty around me made me sort of double down on what the stakes were for us. We got to save it. We got to keep making it.
Well, you came to one point that I wanted to ask you about. So in JC and I's podcast, we actually have a whole episode that is dedicated to us talking about octopuses in different movies and all the symbols. Because just somehow all these movies we watch all have octopuses in them. They all have a different meaning. And I just kind of wanted to ask you about like what drew you to the octopus and like what that means. Like, what's your connection to that?
Well, the other question about doubling and parallel lives and sisters, it seemed to me that like the first sort of obsessive aspect of the octopus that I couldn't stop thinking about was the mimic octopus, and how the mimic octopus could really just become anything. They could become a sea snake. They could become a bottle. They could become anything, and they could just the idea that they could really become anything at all, and that they had to become incredibly creative and come up with lots of different ways to become something, or they would be eaten because they were delicious. It just seemed like such an incredible metaphor for being a vulnerable human, and just if you go through life with a sense of like openness and a sense of like understanding your own deliciousness, the fact that you're like, that you're a person that people want to just like fucking take a bite out of, just to shut them up, and just to shut you up. Like there's a way like that, being vulnerable. How do you stay open when you know your prey? Well, you become like the octopus. You like get really super slick and sly about how you have to be really unpredictable. Um, and I think that I really loved that about octopus. I also saw one in the wild when I was snorkeling, and like this snorkel boat guy didn't really believe me. Like was like, well, those are really hard to see. And I'm like, I saw one. I saw the octopus, and I felt like it had chosen me. Like I will be part of your psyche now. But I've always loved them. I've always written about them. Um, the Bakemono Taco poem that's in this book, I think I wrote 20 years ago. And it was about another vision of an octopus. But then I did some research on octopuses, and I realized that they live a very short time. And then I found the most moving fact about octopuses that I hadn't known before and that I hadn't understood, which is something that's in that movie, The Octopus Teacher, which is they have a very short lifespan. And scientists cannot figure out why evolutionarily, why such an extremely developed intellect would ever occur in an animal that only lives a couple of years. Like it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for that. And that's still a puzzle. And it blew my mind. I thought, oh my God, that's so strange. And also that they're basically aliens, right? Because the people that, we think that aliens are out there, but but we all were from out there, right? And octopuses, if you read this great book, maybe you have because you're octopus scholars, right? What is it called? Is it Other Minds? Is it Peter Godfrey Smith? There are two mainstream octopus books. That octopuses evolved, like they branched off from the human, like from what became humans, like so long ago they might as well be aliens. Like they're made of different like carbon deposits and different stars exploded to come to make Earth, to make them as made us, basically. Does that make sense? Yeah, I know. So, that's why everything's so different, right? When we imagine the aliens, it's like they have a head and they have these eyes. It's like they look like us because everything in the whole universe is shaped like us. I don't think so. Because octopuses, they have this radically decentered, body, right? Their senses are in there. They're not. It's not just the brain. It's in the tentacles. It's in everything. And we can't. This is funny. We can't get our heads around it. Because they're the ones who can get their heads around it, because that's how their heads work, right? But the idea that they might be the aliens already here, living alongside us, and that they might be the ones who aren't invading us, they might be saving us and being like, these poor humans, such fuck ups, they don't know what they're doing. Let's just put them to work over there, and we will make a little like museum for them to show our respect and like honor that their attempts at being on this planet. But we're taking over now because we've been here this whole time and we just didn't feel the need to dominate.
That's such an interesting like concept, especially about humanity just fucking up. Like,
do you really have a podcast about octopuses?
We had an episode about octopuses. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to hear.
Yeah, because like we talked about a few, like 2 Korean films and The Lighthouse that just came out with
my poster behind me
and Robert Pattinson. Yeah, so yeah, you should definitely check out that episode.
I will. I'm obsessed.
We were just like obsessed with like, we were talking about all these movies and we're like, why are there so many octopuses in all these movies? And like they're all like It's just so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because of that. I think we're trying to be like, what if humans hadn't been the dominant species that just went, me, I'm taking everything? What if it hadn't been us doing that? Why did we do that?
And there's like so many, like, especially in one of the movies that we saw, there was like this massive octopus. So just like, yeah, they could easily just like, yeah, I'm just gonna take over this entire planet. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I
just like
did have this one problem where when I realized that they didn't live very long, I'm like, oh no, how are they going to take over if they don't live very long? But I solved the problem by imagining and also basically interpreting that they just have epigenetic transference of information, right? Because they probably do, like all animals do. How do they know where to breed? How do they know how to act, etc.? But yeah, that's kind of how I sort of glossed over that little blip that they don't live for very long. Like they don't live through an electoral cycle.
I love how you talk about the sort of decentralized consciousness of the octopus. And it reminds me, maybe it's too much, but like it's a sort of feminine fluidity, this everywhere being, right?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's a feminine sexuality for sure. And also they can get through anything as long as that space is big enough for their one tooth.
Oh yeah.
So like there's just that one intractable hard part of them, that's just that one, and that's the only thing that has to be like negotiated to get through things. Everything else is totally fluid. It's absolutely like a feminine idea made real by the goddess.
Speaking of the goddess, what's the future for women? How do we make it better?
I don't know. We're gonna have to, I mean, aside from stocking up on Plan B and everyone learning how to do abortions and everybody learning how to, I don't know. Besides radical mass education of women, about our reproductive systems and reproductive health, I don't know. I'm scared to death. I don't think that there's. I think that this. First of all, I don't want to mix up what's the radical danger being posed by this Supreme Court justice nominee with like the general stupidness that's happening with like men showing their dicks on camera and stuff. Like, can you just like one half of the gendered population is being threatened with like losing complete bodily autonomy, and the other half is just like literally dicking around on Zoom. And I don't understand, like, why are these stakes not a little bit more aligned? Like, why don't they care about us? Why don't they care that we're about to lose everything having to do with our own, what we say about our own bodies? So I think it's up to us to like figure out how to convince men to fucking care, and like step up. We think that you think like them if you don't say otherwise. So, you might want to say something. You might want to stick up for us. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was such a negative way and we have to end on a slightly more positive way.
Yeah, sorry. That was my time, then my fault.
Because I could really go on about that.
Sorry.
When I saw that Jeffrey Toobin thing, I'm like, really? His name is Toobin? His name is Toobin, and this is what he does? Like, no imagination. None.
Yeah. What is it you said? The essence of the person?
Oh, the essence of the person lies mystically in the name. It's from the Dictionary of the Occult under naming. And so a person, the mystery is how a person grows into the name they're given, or sort of, enacts the prophecy of the name they've been given, or goes against it, or how does the name mystically reflect or embody the essence of the person? The essence of the person lies mystically in the name. Bernie Madoff with all that money.
Right.
Jeffrey Toobin was like literally Toobin. It's so, I mean, like, it just writes itself. Like, this is so unoriginal, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Brenda, thank you so much. You're brilliant. And
I love talking to all three of you.
No, you're amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're amazing. You're amazing.
Thank you so
Miriam,
much.
you're amazing. I love this. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.